Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name's Debbie, and for today's video, I thought I'd try making one of those cracked egg vase decors. It looks something like this. I saw it one time walking around a store and thought, could I DIY this? And so that's what today's video is about. So let's get right into it. To make our egg shape, I'm going to be using a balloon and blowing it up to the size I want. I know I have 3 balloons on the screen here, but just ignore those because we're only going to be using one. A little tip when blowing balloons, stretch it out first in all directions and it'll make it so much easier to blow up. Okay, so there's our blown up balloon and it is the perfect egg shape. I'm going to set it aside for now while I set up my workspace because it's going to get a little dirty. I'm placing down my silicone mat to protect my table. And by the way, I love this silicone mat for any DIY project. It washes really easily and any paint or glue easily peels right off. If you're curious about it, I'll drop a link in the description box down below. And here I'm going to grab my bowl and make a paper mache mixture of 1 part water and 1 part Elmer's glue and give that a good mix. Then I'm going to cut up some newspaper into some small squares. Newspaper work really well for paper mache projects because they're thin and will soak up water quickly and then become flexible to stick to any shape. Once I got enough squares, I'm going to dip a newspaper square into the glue mixture and place it on the balloon until the balloon is fully covered. We're going to want to let that fully dry before adding a second layer. So carefully, I'm placing the balloon on a cup over a tray to catch any drips, and I'm just going to set it next to an open window, and we'll be right back. Okay, so it's partly dried and it looks like I didn't have enough glue in my mixture because the newspaper is separating from each other. To fix this, I'm just going to paint on a layer of pure Elmer's glue and we'll let that dry overnight. Alright, we're back the next day and it's completely dry now and everything is holding up much better. Today I'm going to add a second layer of newspaper so it'll be much sturdier and hold its shape better when I release it from the balloon. Before I set it aside to dry, I'm going to paint on a layer of pure glue again just in case. Alright, all done, time to let it dry again. And we're back. The balloon is fully dry with 2 layers of newspapers now, and it's time to release it from the balloon. To do this, I'm just going to make a small cut here in the balloon, and as the air escapes, the balloon will pull itself off of the newspaper. And then all we have to do now is just gently pull it out of the hole. And there you have it. We made a large eggshell that's going to help us make our vase. Using a Sharpie, I'm drawing out how I want my eggshell vase to be cracked. Then I'm just going to carefully cut this piece off. And there you go, this eggshell vase is looking pretty good. Alright, my perfectionism is getting the better of me and I'm just going to trim the cracks a little bit more until I'm happy. Okay, I think I'm happy with this now. Now to create the vase itself. I'm going to be using air dry clay. I'll be honest, I don't use air dry clay very often, so I'm hoping this will work out the way I'm imagining it. I'm going to grab some chunks of clay and I'm going to knead and press the clay pieces together so that the pieces are well combined. Then I'm going to take my rolling pin and roll it to about an 1/8 inch thick. This roller is perfect at getting me the exact thicknesses throughout because it has these inserts on either side. So all I have to do is roll out my clay until it doesn't roll out anymore. If you're interested in this rolling pin, I'll link it down in the description box below as well. And if you do end up buying it, highly recommend getting the longer length because it's always better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. All right, back to the clay. After rolling out the clay, I found that it was sticking to my silicone mat. So I'm placing a layer of saran wrap below it instead, and it worked like a charm. Once I've got my clay all rolled out, I'm going to be placing it over the paper mache shell and use it to form our vase. I'm cutting off pieces of the clay to form the spherical shape, as well as any clay that's overlapping each other. Our first piece wasn't big enough, so I'm going to roll out more clay at the same thickness until I'm able to fully cover our shell. And I'm also going to make sure the clay covers up to the top of the cracks as well. Here, I'm smoothing out areas where pieces of clay are meeting and just making sure the entire vase is as smooth as I can get it. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Finally, to finish forming our eggshell vase, I'm going to cut out the cracks. And to form the vase's flat bottom, I'm softly dropping it onto the table. Alright, so this is what it's looking like. I'm really happy with its shape and its cracked opening. The outside is still a bit more bumpy than I would like it to be, but I'm hoping I can sand it out. So after a day of drying, I'm starting to see some big cracks here. The clay isn't fully dry yet, so I believe there's still time to fix these without issue. I made a clay glue mixture by melting some clay in water, and I'm applying this to the cracks and then adding a thin layer of clay over it, sort of like a band-aid to help connect the two separating pieces together. I did that to every crack and set it aside again to dry. Over the next day, I kept my eye on it and applied more clay to areas I saw were forming cracks. This time, the cracks were smaller, so that was a good sign. This is probably the most annoying part of using air dry clay for me, is babysitting it and tending to all its cracks, because as it dries, it shrinks, and as it shrinks, it forms cracks. But then again, maybe I'm just not using it correctly. If you work with air dry clay regularly, I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, we're back, and the cracks remaining are minimal that I think I can just try working with it. Today I'm going to be using sandpaper to try and smooth out the outside as much as I can. A minute into sanding, I realized the 220 grit sandpaper was just not making an impact. So I switched to the 60 grit, and it was definitely much better. I think my German Shepherd Max would also agree. The clay is pretty fragile, so I had to work carefully, but despite my efforts, the small crack I ignored actually grew and then fell off. So I stopped shortly after. Alright, we're back inside, and I think it's time to take the newspaper out. To be honest, I've been kind of dreading this part because the clay is so fragile, but I've held it off for long enough. I was being as careful as I could, but I think my impatience got the better of me, and it happened. A crack formed from the top to the bottom. Luckily though, the pieces that fell off are large, and so I think I could fix it. So now, really carefully, I'm removing the newspaper because if any more cracks happen, I'm not sure if the CI project is going to get finished. Okay, we did it. Thank goodness. All right, now to fix this vase. I'm going to use some E6000 and literally just glue it together. I'm also using two heavy objects to gently hold the egg together while it dries. I also ended up gluing the top piece that had broken off while I was sanding. And I'll be honest, after it's dried, it doesn't look too bad. I'm going to cover this vase in paint so the cracks will be pretty well hidden. There's still hope for this, guys. So grabbing my white acrylic paint, I'm mixing in some baking soda to give this vase some texture. When you mix baking soda with paint, it makes the paint thicker and pasty, and so it helps hide the cracks very well. And here's what it's looking like dried. It's definitely pretty textured from the baking soda, so I'm going to give it a very light sanding with 220 grit sandpaper. And that's it. I'm finished with this eggshell vase decor. After adding in some faux flowers, this is what it looks like. It's kind of a cute yet subtle way to add some spring vibes into the home. So comparing it to my inspiration photo, what do you guys think? Was this a successful dupe? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss videos just like this. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.